Hello, welcome to Deeksha Online Classes. We'll be starting with computer science classes from today, and we'll be starting with part B, that is computing in C++. We'll be starting computing in C++ with the chapter review of C++. Computing in C++ is for 39 marks in theory and 15 marks in practicals. So when we come to this chapter, that is review of C++, you would have already done in your 11th grade, and we'll be revising it now as all these concepts are very important for your 12th grade. The objectives, that is what are we going to learn in this chapter? We are going to study about characteristics of C++, tokens, operators in C++, that is what are the different types of operators and what are the symbols used and what does it evaluate to. The general structure of a C++ program with an example, the data types, that is standard, user defined and derived data types, different types of expressions like what is an expression and what are the different kinds of expression and what does it evaluate to. Input output streams, as we all know, input and output is very important. So how to write to a program and write from a program, that is you're giving input to a program and getting a desired output from a program. Then control statements, what are the different types of control statements available, their general structure, syntax, where to use it and how to use it. Arrays, different types of arrays, functions, again in functions we'll talk about user defined functions and built-in or library functions, and structure data type. We'll write a example for this also, as this is very important to us in the data structures chapter. So we'll start with characteristics of C++. So what do I mean by characteristics of C++? First is the object oriented programming. So when I say object oriented programming, the other two types are procedure oriented programming and structured programming. C++ falls under object oriented programming category, which means that I can make use of object oriented programming concepts to write a C++ program. Whereas C++ is not a pure object oriented programming language. I can write a C++ program without using any object oriented programming concepts, but if you write a program using that, the reusability of code is more and data security is optimal. So your C++ code would be very efficient. The next one is portability. So what do you mean by portability? Portability means you write a C++ program on one operating system and without making any changes to it, it can be used in other operating systems. Next is modular programming. Here the keyword is modular. It means that you can combine or you can link separately compiled source code files to form an application, wherein you can write and compile once and reuse it any number of times depending on your requirements. The last one is C compatibility. When I say compatible, that is you can write a code written in a C language can be a part of a C++ program. That is what it means. Next is C++ character set. What do you mean by character set? Character set means the valid symbols available in the language to write a program. So that is a character set. C++ character set is divided into 4 categories. There are alphabets, digits, special characters and white spaces. When I say alphabets, it is uppercase A to Z and lowercase a to Z. C++ is a case sensitive language. So, what do you mean by case sensitive? Case sensitive means it differentiates between a uppercase and a lowercase, which means that an uppercase I is not equal to the lowercase I. So, we have uppercase A to Z and lowercase a to Z, and you can make use of this in any combination. Next is digits. Digits are nothing but symbols from 0 to 9, and again you can make use of this in any combination. Special characters, if it's not an alphabet or a digit, it is a special character, and each special character has its own significance. For example, if I say modulus, percentage, it's a modulus. Plus is an arithmetic sum, plus. So, you have greater than, less than, which are relational operators. Similarly, each one has its own role to play. Next is white spaces. White spaces are the spaces encountered in a program. For example, a new line either using \n or indel. Carriage return is nothing but your enter key. Same way you have even a blank space. All these are white spaces encountered in a program. Together, all of this would form the C++ character set. Next is tokens. So, what is a token? A token is the smallest individual unit in a program is called a token. Again, you have tokens of different types, such as reserved keywords, reserved keywords, identifiers, variables, literals or constants, punctuators and operators. We'll study all this one by one. We'll start with keywords. So, what is a keyword? A keyword is nothing but a word which already has a predefined meaning in a program, and then you cannot change it. So, whenever a keyword is encountered, the compiler will know what it means. And all the keywords in C++ are written in lowercase. So, for example, float. What does float mean? Whenever float is encountered, the compiler will know that it will hold that location, or you are declaring a variable or a constant of type float, wherein it is going to hold a floating point value. Break, continue, or jump statements. Then you have for, while, which are iterative statements. If is a decision making construct. So, similar way, each one has its own meaning and you cannot change it. Such words are called keywords. Next is identifiers. So, what do you mean by an identifier? Identifiers are the names given to different programming elements. So, the name given to programming elements are called identifiers. Example, int sum. Here, sum is a variable which is going to hold a integer value. So, that is why int sum. For example, I can also have char name of 20, which means that name is a character array of maximum 20 characters. That is, it is a string. So, this is how you name identifiers. And then, when you are naming an identifier, you need to follow certain rules. The first one is, it can either start with an underscore or an alphabet, and it can be followed by digits. And then no special characters are allowed apart from underscore. So, if you want to separate two words, you can use an underscore. And then keywords cannot be named as identifier names. As we all know, keywords already have a meaning. You cannot change it. So you cannot name it as an identifier name. Next is a variable. So what is a variable? A meaningful name given to a data storage location is called a variable. So it's just nothing but a named storage location in computer memory. So why do I need a variable? You need to store data in a program in order to perform operations on that. So you need to, for storing data, you need a variable. The general form of variable declaration is data type, variable name and list. What do you mean by data type? That is, what type of data the variable is going to hold. Depending on the data type, that many bytes of memory would be allocated. Okay. So when I say int A is a variable which is going to hold an integer value. So 2 bytes of memory would be allocated. Here name is a character array which can hold maximum up to 20 characters, and 1 byte of memory would be allocated for each. So 20 bytes of memory would be allocated for name. This is how I declare a variable. And then variables can change their value during the course of a program. And then we'll see how do we declare and initialize a variable in one step. So declaration of a variable, data type, variable name is equal to the initial value with a semicolon. That is, int x is equal to 10 is the declaration and initialization of a variable x, and semicolon because it's the statement terminator, and every C++ statement should be terminated with a semicolon. So this x can change its value during the course of the program, but the initial value what I am giving to x is 10. Next is constants. Constants are identifiers whose value do not change. That is, if you want something not to change the value during the execution, that is, you don't want the user to change the value of it, then you can make it as a constant. The type of constants are integer constants, character constants, floating point constants and string constants. So we'll say the general syntax of declaring a constant. How do you declare a constant? The constant is declared using the keyword const. Const is the keyword. Whenever there are keywords, it has to be always written in lowercase. Const, then the data type, constant name or the identifier name, I will say pi is equal to 3.142, that is value. Const data type, identifier name is equal to value. So I have declared a variable pi which takes the value 3.142. So throughout the program you cannot change the value of pi. If you try to do so, it will give you a error message. So this is a float constant because pi has 3.142. Similar way, if it's an integer value, then it is an integer constant. Character constants has to be declared using single quote, wherein it takes only one character in the quote, and string constants are declared using double quotes. Next is punctuators. So what do you mean by a punctuator? They are used in C++ program as separators. So different punctuators available are brackets. This one, where do we use this? We use this to define the or declare the size of an array. They are always used with arrays. For example, int x of 20. So what do you mean by that? That means I am having an array x which holds maximum of 20 integer values. So these brackets are always used to declare the size of an array. Next is parenthesis, which is always used with functions, in which you will write the parameter or the argument list. Next is braces. Braces is you can enclose a set of statements in this. We have braces for function, beginning of the function, end of a function, beginning of a class, end of a class, and if iterative statements like while, for, and decision making statements like ifs, which has more than one line, you can enclose it in braces. Next is comma. If you want to declare multiple values of the same type in one statement, they can be separated by a comma. Semicolon is a statement terminator. Colon when you do inheritance or when you specify the public, private or protected section of a class. Asterisk is used when you are declaring a pointer. Next is operators. So, what are operators? Operators are symbols which represent a particular operation and give a definite value as an output. So, to perform particular operation, you use operators, which are nothing but symbols. So, the different kinds of operators available in C++ are arithmetic operators, relational operators, logical operators, unary, shorthand, assignment, bitwise and conditional operators. When I say arithmetic operators, what are the different arithmetic operators available? The different arithmetic operators are addition, difference, product and division and modulus. Modulus gives the remainder and it can be used only with integer data types. Why is that so? Because if you have a float value, then you will not get any remainder. So you have to use modulus, which gives you the remainder only with integer data types. Then all these arithmetic operators evaluates to a value. Next is relational operators. What do you mean by relational operators? The different relational operators available are double equal to, greater than, less than, not equal to, greater than equal to and less than equal to. These are the different relational operators available. When I say double equal to, what does it do? It compares the LHS and RHS and it will give you a true or a false value. Relational operators always evaluates to a true or a false value. That is, it compares the LHS with the RHS and if both are same, it gives you a true value. Otherwise, it gives you a false value. True is represented by 1 and false is represented by 0. So, the end result of it would be either 0 or 1. Greater than, less than, and this is not equal to, greater than, equal to and less than, equal to. Next is logical operators. Logical operators, you have logical and, logical or and not. These are the three logical operators available and will give you true value only if both the conditions are true, or gives you a true value if one of the conditions is true and not is just the opposite. If it is true, it will be false and false is true. X, X bar and X. Next is unary operators. Unary operators are increment and decrement operators, which increments the value by 1 or decrements the value by 1, and they are used with one operand. Next is shorthand operators. Shorthand operators is nothing but plus equal to, like x plus equal to 10 is nothing but x is equal to x plus 10. Same way you can have for all of this, that is s plus equal to s minus equal to, divided, product equal to, you can, it need not be always 10, you can have any value over here. But if you want to increment or decrement by one value, you can use unary operator. Next is assignment operator. Assignment operator is equal to, that is, it assigns the value of RHS to the LHS. That is an assignment operator. And then when you are writing a program, you have to be very careful. If you are using it for checking a condition, you cannot use an assignment operator. You have to use a relational operator, because assignment operator always assigns the RHS value to the LHS. Next is bitwise operators. Bitwise operators I have and, bitwise or, not, one's complement. Next is left shift and right shift. They are called bitwise because they work on a bit, that is 0 or 1. That is why it is called a bitwise operator. So I think we are thorough with operators. Next is general syntax of a C++ program. What do you mean by the general syntax of a C++ program? How does a C++ program look? I will be writing an example to explain it properly. Okay, the program should start with preprocessor directives include files. That is, preprocessor directives is nothing but include files, class declaration or definition, class member function definitions, and main member function. So C++, you can note that C++ also supports standalone functions. So main is a library function. Every C++ program ends with a main function. It follows the bottom-up approach. So now let us start writing a C++ program. So we'll write a program with a greeting, like which will greet the user with a name. To begin with, I would have to include hash include statements. So hash include IO stream dot h hash include conio.h. Then after this, class declarations. So class is a keyword to declare a class, and then it has to be in lowercase only. Then the followed by the name of the class. So since we are printing a greeting, I'll just name it as greeting. Then open the flower brackets, and then we'll write the code inside this. So private is an access specifier. We'll discuss this in detail when we do classes and objects. So what do I need? Since we need to print a greeting along with your name, we would need a variable which would store your name. So how do we store a string in C++? It is a character array, char, then I'll name it as name only, since we are going to store the name of the person, and then maximum of 30 characters length. Then public is again an access specifier. Private, public, and protected are access specifiers, which we will discuss in detail in classes and objects chapter. In here I will write the member function. Like the function is not going to return any value, so it will be void, and I'll name it as hello, and I open and close brackets. Since I am not passing any arguments, it is blank. So in order to print the greeting along with the name, I need to take in the name of the user first. So cout, enter your name. Enter your name. Cin name. We will discuss cin.getLine later. To begin with, let us take it with cin. So whatever the names user enters would be stored in the variable name. Now I'll print the greeting cout, hello, welcome, hello, welcome, and then I'll close it. I'll write the variable name. So anything without quotes will print the value stored here and then endl. I'll insert a new line here. This is the end of my function and then the end of my class. It has to be noted here that the class needs to be terminated with a semicolon, wherein a function is not terminated with a semicolon. So we are done with the class. Now I need to write my main function, because without main your program will not work. So void main, open and close brackets. I'll open the brackets, then I will write clear screen is a built-in function. I'll be using it, which is there in the connivo.h, clear screen. Now in order to access the data present inside the class, that is whether it's the data member or the member function, I need to create an object. So how do I create an object? The syntax for creating an object is class name space the object name. So class name is greeting, and let me name it as GOBJ. Again, object name is also user defined name. You can name it provided it is not a keyword. Fine, GOBJ. Now I will use object GOBJ dot the function name, that is hello, to invoke the function. So this is the function call. Once this line is encountered, it will go back to the function and the function gets executed. Get ch, fine, and this is the end of my program. Each program should have a main, and it has to be noted that C++ follows the bottom up approach. So this is my sample program wherein I have declared a class called greeting, and in the private section of greeting I have the name variable declaration, that is a string, and then in the public section I have a member function called hello, to which I am not passing any arguments and which does not return any value. So cout, enter your name, cin name, welcome, and here I am creating an object and calling this function using the dot operator. Please go through this once. So the structure is preprocessor directives, class declaration, member functions, and main program. We've written this thing. Then it is data types. So what is a data types? It is a set of data values together with a set of operations. Each in C++, if you are using any programming element, it has to be declared. So when you specify the data type, depending on the data type, that many bytes of memory would be allocated for that element. The data types are classified as fundamental data types, derived data types, and user defined data types. In fundamental data types, I have integer, float or double, character, void, and bool. So what is an integer? An integer is a data type which do not have the fraction part, like only the integral part. Then float and double is a real number wherein it has both the integral as well as the fraction part. Character is nothing but a single character which has to be enclosed in single quotes, and if you have more than one character, it becomes a string which needs to be enclosed in double quotes. Void is nothing but it does not return any value, and it is always used with functions. It is used as a return type of a function. Bool is nothing but it gives either true or a false value. Next is derived data types. In that we have arrays. So arrays are homogeneous set of elements which are physically stored one next to another under one name. So it is a collection of elements of the same data type under one name, and they are one next to another in memory also. There are different types of arrays, that is one dimensional array, two dimensional array and multi-dimensional arrays. And array elements can be accessed using the index or the subscript. Then we have functions. Functions are subroutines or subprograms which does a particular operation. It can calculate a value, you can take in values, you can print something on the screen. So it can be any type of operation. For that you write a function. Again, functions are of two types. One is built-in functions, the other one is user-defined functions. Next is pointers. Pointers are variables which point to a memory location. So these are arrays, functions and pointers. Reference are variables which acts as a alias to another object or value. That is, a reference is an alternative name given to an existing variable is a reference. And next is structures. Structures are heterogeneous set of data stored under one name. Like, what do you mean by heterogeneous set of data elements? That is, it's a collection of elements of different data types stored under one name. Arrays are homogeneous set of elements, whereas structures are heterogeneous set of elements. Union again is a heterogeneous set of elements, but then they are different from structures based on the memory allocation. Okay, then memory allocated to structure is different than the memory allocated to unions. Then we have a class. Class is nothing but a collection of data members and member functions. Next is enumeration. What do you mean by enumerated data types? Enumerated data types are nothing but user-defined data types with values ranging over a finite set of identifiers called enumeration constants. For example, days of a week. So we know the days of week are 7. So it's a finite number of elements and each one is a enumeration constant. Next is type def. What do you mean by type def? Type def is nothing but if you want to give a new name to an existing data type, then you can use type def. Example, if I want to name int as number, I can type def it. So I can, wherever I refer int, like int x, I can write it as number x. But then it has to be noted that the structure do not change. So these are the data types available, and functions I will do when we go to the function section, the type of functions, the general syntax, how to do it. And then we have one chapter, entire chapter on pointers, class, enumerated data types. Yes, when we do class and objects, we will also write a program to create and use it. Fine. Next is expressions. So what is an expression? An expression consists of a syntactically valid combination of operators and operands. What do you mean by syntactically? That is, there shouldn't be any syntax error. Or syntactically valid combination of operators and operands that computes a value. Example, Like see, if I say x plus y, here x and y are operands and plus is the operator. So the three types of C++ expressions are arithmetic expressions, relational expressions and logical expressions. So again in arithmetic expressions we have integer mode, real mode and mixed mode expressions. Fine. So what do you mean by integer mode expressions? In integer mode expressions, all the operands are of the type integer only. In real mode, it is all the float or the double type, and then in mixed mode you can have a combination of both integer as well as real operands. So this is arithmetic expression which computes to a value. Then I have relational expressions. So what are the relational operators? We know that is double equal to, greater than, less than, not equal to, greater than equal to and less than equal to. These are all relational operators. So what does this relational? I can say x is equal to 10, y is equal to 20. So if I say x greater than y, so what does it evaluate to? X is 10, y is 20. So 10 is not greater than 20. So it will evaluate to 0, that is false. So relational expressions always evaluate to a true or a false value. Next is a logical expression. We have logical operators, logical and, or and not. So for example, if I say that m is greater than or equal to 35 and m should be less than or equal to 100. That is, a student m supposes a marks, it should be greater than or equal to 35 and it should be less than or equal to 100, then only the result is pass. So this evaluates to a true or a false value. This also evaluates to a true or a false value. And then for logical and, if logical and will evaluate to a true value only when both of this evaluate to a true value. Like let us do that in detail here. For example, if I say that m is equal to 45, then what it will be? M greater than or equal to 35 and m less than or equal to 100. It means that m greater than or equal to 35. 45 definitely is greater than 35. So it evaluates to a true value 1 and again this also evaluates to a true value. 1 and 1 gives true for an and. If it is 25, then it evaluates to 0. This evaluates to 1. 0 and 1 is false, 0. So this is an example of logical expressions. So we studied about arithmetic expressions, integer mode, real mode, mixed mode, and then we have relational expressions wherein we use different relational operators and it evaluates to either true or a false value. Then we have logical expressions using and, or and not. Next is control statements. Control statements alter the flow of a sequence of instructions. Before that, we have to know what is the flow of instructions. Always the instructions are executed in a sequential manner, starting from the first line of main to the last line of main. If you want to alter that sequence, that is, if you want to alter the sequential execution, we use control statements. There are three types. One is selection statements, iterative statements and jump statements. Fine. We'll start with selection statements. What is a selection statement? Selection statement are executed only once. It has to be noted that they are not iterative statements. So, it executes only once. It is, if you want to execute it multiple times, then it has to be put in a loop. Otherwise, it executes only once. So, selection statements allow us to choose a set of instructions depending upon the truth value of an expression. Like, for example, I want to write whether a number is an even number or not. So, I have to print even only if the input value is even. Otherwise, I don't want to print anything. So, I want to print. That printing is a set of instructions only I have to execute if it's a even value. So, then I can use if statement there. So, let us study each one in detail. C++ provides 5 types of selection statements: if else, nested if, else if ladder and switch. Fine. So, we'll start with simple if statement. How do a simple if statement work? A simple if statement, general syntax of a simple if statement is if, then the condition, and then a set of statements. If this is true, then these set of statements are executed, otherwise it will not be executed. This is a simple if, and I can have an if statement without an else. Next is if and else. If I have two conditions, like two alternatives, if certain condition is true, I need to execute certain set of statements, otherwise I have certain other set of statements to be executed, like if condition, I'll write it here. It is always good practice to put it under brackets, because if you don't, then only the one statement, the first statement gets executed, the remaining statements will not be executed. If this one, else, fine. So, else, you cannot have an else without an if, and else do not come with a condition. You give condition only to an if, and every else should have an if. Every if need not have an else. Fine, and it is not terminated by a semicolon. Here I can write one example. If the entered number, you have to check whether the entered number is a even number or not. How do I do that? If, for example, I have int x, fine, cout and cin, you would have written it. So, if x modulus 2, every even number, when you divide it by 2, the remainder is 0, right? So, modulus gives you the remainder x modulus 2 double equal to 0. I have to use a relational operator here, not an assignment operator. I am checking whether LHS and RHS are equal or not. Then I will write cout even, else I will write cout odd. Fine. So, this is if and else. Next is nested if statement. What is a nested if statement? If I write a nested if statement, how do I write it? If condition, fine. Again I will write one more if inside, and then I will finish it. And then I have an else statement. Inside else also I can write an if condition and then close it. So, if inside an if is a nested if statement. Getting it? So, if this first outer if is true, then only it will go inside the inner if, and if this condition is true, it will execute this, otherwise it will not. If this if gets executed, else will not be executed, and if this does not get executed, it will go to else, and again in the body of else I have written an if. It checks this condition. If it is true, it will execute the statements here, otherwise it will not execute. Next is if and else if ladder. For example, if I have multiple conditions to be checked for like days of a week. If I enter a number starting, suppose if I enter 1, it should print me Monday. Then if I enter 2, it should print me Tuesday. So I have 7 different conditions, and then finally if anything from 1 to 7, I have not entered anything in between that. If I enter some other number, it should print me not a valid day. So that is the thing. So 7 values can be true for a variable. So I can write if the first condition like D is double equal to 1. What will I print? C out Monday. Same way, if D double equal to 2, else if. It will be else if, then else if, the next condition, like this only I will write. If nothing of this is true, then I will write else. Else does not come with a condition. I will just write not a valid day. So, if inside an if is a nested if statement, and multiple values, you are not writing else if inside if, but you are writing if the first condition. If it is not true, else if the second value which could be true, else if the next value, like you can have any number of else if statements, and in the end you will have an else statement wherein if nothing of this is true, you need to print this. Fine. The next is switch statement. What is a switch statement? Switch statement works with only integer values, and it works with only one value. You cannot give an expression there. It works with only one value, and it has to be either an integer or a single character. It cannot be, the switch variable cannot be float, double, or it cannot be an expression or a string. It has to be either single character or it has to be an integer. So how do I write that? The general syntax of switch is expression, then case value 1 quotation, then break. So like that, case value n, then break. Case 1 I can say, or I can say case 1, case 2, case 3, also up to case n, and then nothing is true, I will go to default case. So for default you don't have case. Why do I need a break here? For example, if it is days of a week only, so what will be that switch? Switch D and O, I will say day number. Then the first case is case 1. Fine. See out Monday. Then break. Same way, case 2, case 3, case 4 up to case 7, and then I will write default not a valid day. Correct? So, why do I need break here? Because if suppose the first one itself is true, I need not check the remaining cases. That is why I write a break here, and if nothing of this is true, it will go to default, and you write a default message for the user to see. So, day number is the expression wherein you would have asked the user to enter. Same way, case value 1, whatever you need to write it, and then break up to case value n. You can have any number of cases, and then in the end you will write a default which states that if nothing of this is true, you need to write a default message. Fine. And this case is a keyword which has to be written in lowercase only, and then you need to give a space between the case and the first value of the expression. Fine. The next, we finished selection statements, that is if else statement, nested if statement, else if ladder, and switch statement. In today's class, we finished objectives, then what are the different tokens, C++ characteristics, and selection statements. So, in next class, we will be starting with iterative statements. Please note down the homework question for today. Write a program to swap the values of two variables using classes and objects. That is, you have to write a program to swap the values. You can write it with third variable or without third variable, it is your choice, but the program should be written using classes and objects only. Okay then, see you tomorrow. Bye bye.